former Vice President Joe Biden's entrance into the presidential race on Thursday completes the final major anticipated piece of the 2020 campaign's puzzle, establishing him as arguably the weakest front-runner for the Democratic Party's nomination in 16 years. Nonetheless, his bid still carries considerable advantages: universal name identification, across-the-board popularity among Democratic voters, and an initial polling advantage that most contenders would. Since the beginning of the year, the 76-year-old Biden has clutched about 30% of the primary vote nationally, about a quarter of the vote in Iowa, and around 20% in New Hampshire. So he waited. Unlike a slew of brand-name contenders who flooded the race in January and February, Biden saw no need to rush onto the field. While candidates like Senator Kamala Harris of California and Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, have each enjoyed boomlets of momentum, none has yet overtaken Biden. That includes even Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, the fundraising leader who places second to Biden in most surveys of the race. And yet Biden is the front-runner that instills fear in virtually no other significant rival. The operating assumption among his opponents is that Democrats are yearning for someone younger, fresher, and more representative of the progressive strand that currently animates the party. They believe that Biden, as a candidate with both feet in, and not just a famous possibility, will gradually wither under exhausting scrutiny of a record in public office that spans nearly half a century. Biden will have to answer for decades of votes, policies, speeches, writings, donations, off-the-cuff outbursts and jokes, all while staking out positions on the current laundry list of progressive proposals being offered by other candidates and activists. Of course, the theory of Biden's case isn't that he'll be the most progressive, audacious, or even inspiring candidate of the 19 other offerings. It's that in this moment of extreme national peril for Democrats, he remains their best option to rid the country of President Donald Trump. If Biden can make it through the primaries, he's the one Democratic candidate who appeals to the white working-class voters who handed the election to Trump, and could hand 2020 to Biden instead, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie told Tina Brown in a podcast this week. That's a whale of an if. Biden was preemptively hit with allegations he touched women inappropriately at campaign events, charges that carried heightened resonance in this #Me Too era. He escaped the stories largely unscathed because of his longtime reputation as a touchy, but not ill-intentioned, glad-hander. New stories would trigger further examination of his actions. Biden has already apologized for the way Anita Hill was treated during the 1991 confirmation hearing of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, a hearing he led. He's admitted he hasn't always been right on criminal justice reform, a reference to his role in the 1994 crime bill which ushered in a spree of tough prison penalties for non-white drug users. But the 90s are just part of the reckoning. There's a National Rifle Association gun bill in 1986 that, as NBC News describes, allowed dealers to sell rifles, shotguns and ammunition through the mail, and eventually the internet, limiting federal inspections of firearms dealers. Biden joined the overwhelming congressional vote for it. Even further back, there are Biden's 1975 comments against busing as a means for desegregating schools. At the time, Biden called busing an asinine concept. That was 44 years ago. Will Democrats hold it against him? It may depend on how well he handles the incoming fire in a media cycle that's unforgiving but often fleeting. Biden will have a choice to make about how much to concede and apologize versus standing his ground and fighting back. Biden's career as a centrist Democrat is well established, and he appears ready to run as a candidate who emphasizes reconciliation over recriminations. But the unrelenting pressure of a campaign can undermine a candidate caught between these countervailing forces. The best example of this thus far is Harris, who appears to be struggling with whether to maintain a center-left pragmatic posture or heed the wishes of ascendant liberals who are demanding everything from voting rights for incarcerated prisoners to the complete eradication of the private insurance industry. On many of these questions, Harris' answers convey that she isn't really sure yet which lane to swim in, or how to merge the two. It's no wonder that of all the candidates, Biden's entry probably poses the biggest initial threat to Harris, who is betting on a strategy that bridges support between African Americans and traditional Democrats. Harris and Biden are personally fond of each other, and some have speculated that she could end up being his running mate if he attains the nomination. Biden has run for the presidency twice before, but the party he's courting is radically different than it was in even 2008, when he competed against Barack Obama and ultimately earned a spot on the ticket. He is now the 20th Democratic candidate in the 2020 race, which means he starts at a disadvantage for resources and on-the-ground organization. On the other hand, no person in this race has been in more personally and politically onerous situations than Biden. This being the last political fight of his life, he has nothing left to lose. He's been around long enough to know his glass is half full, but if he's able to unite his party around a nostalgic white septuagenarian who has 40 years of scars from political combat, it'll be, as Biden might say, a BFD.